So yeah, so this is what brings me to living in a field. So I was in the park, and I was there for 2 months or so. In fact, almost exactly 2 months. 4 days short of 2 months. Each day in the morning, I would pile my things up under a tree, and I had a growing list of things because I would go out through the day. If you imagine, I started off with 2 picnic blankets. That was my bed, and then I found like a yoga mat, and that became the base for my bed. And then I found 4 towels, and I would put those. So I'd have one of my picnic blankets facing down with the rubber to the ground, and one with the rubber up to the sky. And then as it started to get cooler at the end of August, I'd put these towels inside the bed as kind of extra blankets, and one as a pillow. And then I found an actual pillow from a swimming pool, from the sunbeds, the lounges that you have around the swimming pools. So I've got this gathering pile of belongings, growing pile, and I leave them under a tree, and then I'd take off for the day, and then I'd come back late afternoon, and nobody ever touched my things apart from once when a dog got in and stole some food. Okay. And then one day, 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm in the park, just starting to pack up my bedding, but workmen arrive. And they park a big lorry under the tree that I put my belongings under. And then they start chopping down all the bushes around it. And then they start trimming limbs off all of the trees around it, and they start pruning it all back. And I've snuck back under and put my things in there before they got to work. But now they're cutting branches down and they're landing all around my things. So I take off for the day because I can't just hang around. And when I come back at 3 in the afternoon, it takes me 2 hours to dig my things out from underneath all these branches. And they've cut away everything to such an extent that there's no way that I'm going to be able to leave my things there in future. So that's a clear signal that they want me to move on. I was there one day while a lady who lived nearby was making a phone call, obviously to the authorities, and from the way she was gesticulating and gesturing, it was obvious that it was about me, and that she wasn't happy that there was this guy in the park and that he had his things under a tree. This is why they've come and made it so that you can't have this little private area. So I spent the next 5 hours backwards and forwards. This was the only spot I could think of. This was the only other kind of free land that I could even think about. I had no real idea about it, except I knew it was here. Tina, go. Tina, stop. Tina, come here. So backwards and forwards, carrying all my belongings and bringing with me these bottles of water that I had, and all of my belongings. And after digging out all these trees, digging out my things from under the trees, I put my things down here, and I picked what I thought was a good spot, right here where my tent is now. You've seen this before. You know where my tent is. I don't know how well it'll show with the sun straight into the camera. But that was the actual spot I picked when I first arrived. Oh, let me square this back up. Now, I thought to myself, after all this hard work, I'll go for a walk. I'll have a little rest, clear my head. I'll go sit and look at the sea. And while I was out, these thunderclouds came from nowhere. And I found a big plastic sheet while I was out. Not like a tarpaulin, more like a big plastic bag that a fridge freezer would arrive in. I think it might have been from a fridge freezer, something that kind of size. And I'd picked that up on my travels, and then I saw the sky, and I thought, yeah, that'll be handy. Big plastic bag that I can crawl into, because I didn't have any real waterproof coverage at this point. And before I got home, it started raining. Before I got back into this field where I'd just dropped off my belongings a few hours earlier, it started raining heavily. And I got back here, rolled out my bed, put this plastic cover over me and the dog, and we were it was like a transparent tent. We're sat in this transparent tent looking out at thunder and lightning and rain. And it rained and it rained, and it just didn't stop for about 2 hours. And all of a sudden, Tina, go. Come here. Tina, come here now. Good girl. All of a sudden, I was hit by kind of a mini wave, and I found I was laying in a river. It was only about ankle deep, 3-4 inches, 10 centimeters to you metric folk. I say 10 centimeters deep. Not incredibly deep, except when you're lying on the ground and all your belongings are on the ground, including all your electronics, your phone, your Kindle tablet, your Kindle book reader, your power banks, your thumb drives, all your cables. What else did I have? I can't even think what else I had. But everything. All your clothes and everything. It's all, and this is mucky, filthy kind of flood water. It's washed off the street, it's got dog muck in it, it's got soil in it, it's come across a field. Basically it comes down 2 hills, and when it sweeps around following the road, well, the road sweeps around, the water doesn't. The water carries in a straight line and comes across this field. And the nice spot that I'd picked out was like a dry riverbed that the storm drains away through. So that was fun. And it was only 10 o'clock at night when the rain stopped, but I'm wet through. Tina's wet through. My bedding's wet through. And we got kind of 8, 10, 12 hours until morning. What do you do? Where do you go? How do you stay warm? How do you get dry? We cuddled on the wet mattress. You can still... What is she doing? Oi! More destruction. We cuddled all night long. We cuddled, laying on a wet mattress, in wet clothes, and wet bedding. Surprisingly, you can get quite warm, as long as it's not too cold outside. Yeah, I mean, you know, it was whatever month it was. It was October 10th. So it's not gone too cold yet. Wasn't too cold yet. That was later. But we cuddled until morning. And then at 7 o'clock, we got up and we walked and we went and we sat on the benches on the cliff tops that we like to sit on. And the wind blows and the sun comes up and we got dry. We took, because Tina carried, she did her share. We took the bedding, we took the 2 blankets. That was my priority. I'd laid out the mattress here so that it had a chance of being in the sun and had a chance of drying somewhat. But I knew it wouldn't dry in one day, not from being totally submerged. We took the 2 picnic blankets and maybe a towel or 2 and just get ourselves dry, get the bedding dry for that night, and the rest would have to take a 2nd or 3rd day to dry out. And that's what we did. We just coped. And that's what we're still doing to this day. Whenever we get wet, we hope that the next day is going to have sunshine. And 9 times out of 10 you do. You get sunshine and maybe a breeze, a good drying day. And we cope, we manage. And when a nice guy buys you a tent, and there's a storm coming that night, but you've got one day to take down your old shelter and put up your tent and move all your things into it, you do it. You get on with it, you get it done, you cope. And when 3 months later a storm comes along and splits your tent clean in half, cleaves a big hole in the entire length. I think I read last night that the tent's meant to be 5 meters long. That doesn't sound quite right. But end to end, split. What do? You cope, you manage, you do what you can. You put a tarpaulin or a ground sheet or whatever over the top. You make do. When it turns out you've not done good enough and that the water gets in, you wait till morning, you drag everything out, you dry off as best you can, you make do. You build a bed, if you've seen the latest video. You build a bed so that your mattresses aren't on the ground when the water pools. So yes, they're going to get wet, but no, they're not going to get as wet. You manage, you cope, you do the best you can. Because the alternative is that you don't. You don't manage, you don't survive, you don't keep going. That's not an option. You've got to keep going. You hold on till morning.